reflection questions that were on the
Hi everyone, I just wanted to jump in for a quick second. I would love, if it's possible, I don't know how many students are in the room at Nerinx, but we've gotten some introductions from the Sisters of Loretto that are here. But I would love to, if it's possible, to have you all introduce yourself just briefly, just so we can all see who we're talking to. Would that be a possibility? Could you kind of all jump in front of the camera, maybe one by one? Thank you.
That's you, right?
Yeah, and perhaps we could have you introduce yourself by name, what year you are in school, and a key issue about gender equity that you're passionate about. That might be too specific, but if you can come up with something.
I'm Sadie. I'm a junior, and I think I'm probably most passionate about getting better sexual health education throughout St. Louis and just throughout the world. I'm Izzy. I'm a junior also, and I think I'm most passionate about the mental health issues, especially like being educating students and everyone throughout the world on issues regarding all sides of mental health.
Hi, I'm Maida. I'm a senior here at Nerinx, and one of the biggest issues that I'm kind of most passionate about is kind of equal opportunity and equal pay for women in like the US, Missouri, and across the world.
Hi, I'm Claire. I'm also a senior, and I am probably most passionate about getting better support for women that are victims of sexual violence.
Hi, my name's Kara Munns. I'm a sophomore here at Nerinx, and I'm also passionate about sex education and also having birth control more accessible to women. Hi, I'm Ella, and I am a senior, and I'm most passionate about education on gender in society for not only women, but men as well.
Good luck.
We're going to say a quick hello. I'm Jennifer. I'm Beth Buchek. It's nice to be with you all. Yeah, we're great. Happy to be with you.
Thank you both for gathering all together. You know, I know from Beth and I's perspective, we've been seeing everyone's information come in and getting you registered and communicating on email, so it's so good
to hear
your voices. Okay. Beth, are we ready to kind of move on to hear back from the students? I know we have a slide of some of the questions that were posed. Maybe we could bring that up. Okay, give us a second. Francesca's just going to bring that up on the screen. So for those who are just attending on Zoom and aren't one of the presenters, what we're going to kind of move into is hearing from some of our Nerinx Hall students. There is a new report from UNICEF, UN Women and Plan International that's come out. The title is on the screen in front of you. It's called A New Era for Girls, Taking Stock of 25 Years of Progress. And it's really focused on specifically for girls, so that's defined as female identifying individuals under the age of 18, what has gone on and what has progressed or what has not progressed since the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action. So I think, am I correct, they all received these same questions. So we'd love to hear from you all at Nerinx about some of your thoughts on the report and just your thoughts on the Beijing Plus 25 process. So feel free to take it away.
Who wants to start for us? Okay, Maida. All right, here comes Maida. She's on her way.
Thank you.
So I really enjoyed reading the report, and I like wrote down a few of the things that I thought were like most emphasized in the report, which was definitely like education and then gender-based violence against girls and then health. But one thing I thought that maybe wasn't emphasized like a lot in the report was kind of what I wrote down was like girls' opinions of themselves, so like self-esteem and body image, which I know is probably a lot bigger issue here in the U.S., which is why it kind of came to my mind. And also since in the rise of like the internet and social media, I think I just thought that it wasn't emphasized a ton of like what like self-esteem and kind of what girls thought of themselves.
Thank you so much. That's so interesting. And if it's possible, I'd love to maybe one of your teachers, either Jennifer or Beth, could email some of the responses to us just so that we can kind of keep track of them and keep track of your thoughts and use them in the future in our work here.
Lizzie, I know you had some stuff right now. This is okay. Well, Lizzie, you want to say something? Yeah. All right, here comes Izzy. She's coming over.
Wonderful, thank you.
Okay, so on the part about the missing or not emphasized enough in the report, Sadie and I both thought it was important that mental health support within schools and basically everywhere, it should not be overlooked, and like with everything to deal with social media and even what Maida was talking about with body image, mental health is one of the most important like things that I could think of that was not emphasized enough in the report, and how we can work together to end stigma around mental health like disabilities and things such as depression and anxiety. Yeah,
that's so true. It's not talked about enough, and it's often so stigmatized. We often talk about kind of the Western notion of health, which is so focused on just the body and not on our mind as well. And that compacts and it compounds, especially on girls, I think, as well. I totally agree with you. Do we have anyone else from Nerinx that kind of would want to respond right now?
Amy, we're asking, are we still talking about the first question or just any other questions? We're not quite sure which way to proceed.
Yeah, no, great question. So we can kind of popcorn through all these questions, but if the students kind of have responses to each one, why don't we go ahead and move on to the second one?
Okay, great. The second one, so it would be, how about based on your experience with any of your peers, what are the top 3 challenges?
We can also move on to the third, since I know that we just kind of heard about the importance of mental health being missing in the report as well.
All right, Claire, you got something? And then Kara and Ella will have you speak next to them.
For the third question, I think both for young women and men, that like peers that I've talked to, something that is just not, I guess, emphasized enough or talked about a lot is sexual violence, sexual assault, especially for young women. Like if that does happen to you, how do you go about like dealing with that? Who do you tell? And like, how do you get justice if that does happen to you?
I don't know if you can hear from our audience that's here in the Bronx, but everyone's nodding along and nodding yes with you on that one. Any other responses to that third question? We can also move on to the fourth.
I think we've got some more. They're making their way over.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thank
We
you.
want to hear from all of them. We want to hear what are the top 3 challenges that need to be solved here in the U.S. We want to hear from each one of you.
Okay, so I think so I was reading this, and it talks about the number of girls out of school. And I think there's like a big lack of education and resources that goes along with like sexual violence, or just like education in general, with like wanting to like learn about like discrimination against like the gender and stuff. And I think that just these, like, I saw the graphs and stuff saying like how women just like don't have the education still, and you'd think that education would go up, but for some reason it's going down. And I thought that was just like, it's kind of upsetting for me personally.
Mm. Thank you.
Something that's not really covered in the article is just like woman representation in the government. And I feel like if there's more education for women, then we could have more like girls making decisions in our world today, which I feel like would solve a lot of our issues if we had more women being represented in our government. So I feel like education can lead into like us making bigger steps to solve these issues.
So I wanted to respond to some of the top 3 challenges to be solved here in the US. And this kind of is related to like education for women also, but I think like sexual and reproductive like health education, especially like in schools and kind of just in general, needs to be, that's just like a big issue I think that needs to be solved, because with that education will come just better health and better protection for young women and girls.
So I was going to talk about the action steps that could possibly we could take to solve these challenges. So I know from experience with my mom and I go to a lot of domestic violence, or not domestic violence, women and children like shelters that are homeless, to volunteer and give like blankets and stuffed animals and things like that. And I know that a lot of the shelters in St. Louis actually do not allow domestic violence victims to stay in their shelters. So that just causes issues with them having to go back to their families and back to the men or women that are abusing them. And I feel that's not what should be happening. We should have specific shelters for domestic violence victims, maybe such like that are secret, or we could keep it because if their families or the people that are abusing them find out where they're staying, they will be allowed to not allowed to stay there, because this could cause issues. Their families could come and find them. And I know that is just like a step that needs to be taken to get new domestic violence shelters.
I also had a response to some of the action steps that we could take. I think for all of us here at Nerinx, the easiest way to get started on those steps would be educating like peers here at school, other people our age specifically. I know we kind of talked about it earlier, but sharing that UN curriculum with them, and just getting that out to at least start like with people at school, and hopefully kind of grow that with time.
I'm gonna go back to a different question, but this one was number 3. I think that one of the big issues is access to sexual health systems and education. I know that a lot of people that I've talked to have gone to private schools growing up, and the sexual education that they get and figure out about sexual health can have a lot of misleading or false information that has made people really, really scared to, talk to their parents about certain things, or, go to be more open, I guess, about their sexual health and stuff like that. So I think that it's really important that we like continue to educate ourselves and kind of spread awareness about what's true and what's not. Also, I was just thinking that like Planned Parenthood is very controversial, but I think it's also important for people to be able to have free STD testing and like better access to birth control, and also just be able to get like free tampons and stuff like that, because I think it's really important that we do get some of those, I don't know, some of those helpful things for women, especially in inner city areas too.
So I think another like big issue, like challenges for like women, kind of just based on my experience in the U.S. is, as Kara also said earlier, the lack of women in government. And as we were talking about earlier, how there's no female presidential candidates left, and like we will unfortunately have to wait 4 more years for that. But I think that it starts with representation in the government is kind of where change will come, where a lot of change will come from. So I think segueing into like some action steps that we could possibly take is donating to certain organizations that help women get elected, places like some things like Emily's List, and we just need to take more responsibility to donate to those organizations and volunteer and work with them to help get more women elected into even like county and state and hopefully federal government positions.
I'm not one of the students, but I wanted to kind of piggyback off what Sadie was saying about like sexual health, a thing that I've experienced. I'm a kind of newer mom. I have 4 and a 2-year-old, and there was a lot of lack of education too, just about like reproductive health from the education standpoint, and then our maternity leave in this country and access, especially for women who are working jobs where they're getting paid hourly, and lack of access to healthcare, and then lack of access to a decent maternity leave is really problematic for people.
And support for breastfeeding.
Oh yeah, and support for breastfeeding is a huge thing. Even at a job where you are in a well-respected community, it can be really difficult. So, and there's a lot of lack of education about that. So you come into it and you're a new mom and you don't have any idea what you're doing. So.
I have a question. I was thinking that we could do something at Nerinx that would like incorporate the UN curriculum, and then maybe if like people would learn about it more, they'd be more interested in trying to like take these action steps to like do more things. So I was wondering if maybe we could do some kind of fundraiser, bake sale, sort of something that we could raise money and donate to organizations. Are there like specific organizations that you guys are like very supportive of and think would be a good idea to, I don't know, fundraise money to give to them?
That's an amazing question and also an amazing idea. So, I mean, Beth, I would also love your input on this, but I also, as you're asking that question, I just am noticing that there's similarities in both what our sisters at the Mother House have said in terms of the importance of financing and what you all have said too, and that we need to be funding organizations and groups that have the power to kind of financially power some of the change we're looking for. And I wanted to bring that up as that was coming to mind, because that was just something that I thought was so interesting that both groups here have really pointed out is the importance of funding. Beth, in terms of input on organizations that we would really suggest that would really benefit from financing, what would you say to?
But thank you. This has been very interesting.
I'm going to kind of start wrapping up and move into a little bit of a break before we move on to our next item on the agenda. From St. Louis, from Nerinx, is there anything else you all would like to add, or things that you didn't get to say already in regards to any of these questions?
So just to kind of like add on and stuff to like things that we could do, we can incorporate classes with like education on women in important roles in society and leadership positions. And I feel like this would inspire like young girls and show them that they can take on like positions in like politics and whatnot. So like they can see that like it's not just men and they can do like important things.
Got one more coming.
Awesome.
Just in response to this like fifth question, I just want to give a little plug and say that I think without like my Nerinx education and my Loretto education, I don't think I would be as passionate about these issues. So I'm just really thankful that we have these 4 values at Nerinx of faith, community, justice, and respect that we're able to kind of think about and learn about in our classes, and then therefore put to issues and things like this.
Where did any of your stuff at the mother house translated into?
I actually went on a trip to the mother house my sophomore year, and that was like a very big, I don't know, it was like a really good experience for me. And it changed me a lot, and it was able to show me like Loretto's history of fighting for women's rights, and kind of just like fueled that fire in me even more than it had been there before. So.
I think that's it from Nerinx for right now, Amy.
Thank you all so much. I feel really just lucky to get to hear the way you all take material and think about inequities in the world and just analyze it in such an eloquent and succinct way. And I just personally find it very inspiring. So thank you all so much for sharing.